A human hand in a black glove injects some substance into the yolk of an egg, and after a few minutes, it divides, producing an identical egg. At the same time, on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, a star for Oscar winner Elizabeth Sparkle is unveiled. Time passes, the star fades, and soon Sparkle's name no longer shines as brightly. She herself now hosts an aerobics TV show. Despite her age, the woman is fit and looks quite good. However, one day she goes to the restroom, and seeing that the women's restroom is out of order, she enters the men's room. Inside a stall, she hears the voice of the show's producer, Harvey, saying that Elizabeth is outdated and the show needs a young and hot girl. It's time for Sparkle to retire. After all, her Oscar was won at the dawn of cinematography, and it's time to make way for the younger generation. Upset, Elizabeth goes to lunch with the producer, where he laughingly announces her retirement and leaves with a friend. The woman sees a fly in her wine glass and feels just as helpless. On her way home, the actress gets distracted by workers taking down her billboard, and she gets into an accident. In the hospital, the doctor recognizes the star and compliments her, but the woman starts crying because all her fame is now behind her. Embarrassed, the doctor says goodbye and leaves. However, a young nurse suddenly starts examining Elizabeth's back, muttering that she is perfect for an experiment. Before leaving, he slips a flash drive into her pocket with a commercial for a product called Substance. Elizabeth reads the name of the product when an older man calls out to her. It turns out to be her old classmate, Fred. He is happy to see her and offers to meet and reminisce about their youth. Fred writes his phone number on a random scrap of paper, and after soaking it in a puddle, he hands it to Elizabeth, who pretends to be happy to see her old friend. In reality, she falls into a deep depression, especially after she finds a bouquet at home, thanking her for being part of the team all these years. Rereading the word "was," Elizabeth inserts the flash drive into the TV and watches a commercial for a substance whose injection unlocks her DNA and initiates cell division, creating another version of herself. This is the substance, and the person is the matrix. And while they are two different personalities, they are still the same person, just an improved version that will be younger, more beautiful, and more perfect. Both personalities must exist in symbiosis and switch every 7 days, always remembering that they are one whole. Elizabeth goes to a bar and, watching the happy couples, realizes her loneliness. She returns home, and after long thoughts and memories, she calls the number provided and orders the substance. She is given a postbox number where she can pick up the product, and the call is quickly ended. The woman spends a sleepless night, and in the morning, she sees an ad in the newspaper looking for candidates to replace her as the host of the show. At the same time, there's a letter in the mail with a card and the postbox number for the substance. Elizabeth resolutely heads to pick up the package. Using the card, she opens a hidden door in an old building and finds a storage unit with a package waiting for her. At home, Elizabeth opens the box. All the substance ingredients are neatly packed in bags and labeled activator, stabilizer, the other you, the switch, food for the matrix, food for the other you. The activator only needs to be used once, but the stabilizer must be administered daily, and it's taken from the matrix cells. Most importantly, the pair must switch places every 7 days without exception, and they must always remember that they are one whole. In the morning, Elizabeth spends a long time staring at herself in the mirror, noting the signs of aging. Eventually, she injects the one-time activator, after which she is struck by unbearable pain. The woman falls to the floor, writhing in agony as her back splits open, and from within emerges her younger version. This new personality gradually comes to her senses, and upon looking in the mirror, she sees the reflection of a young and very beautiful girl. For a while, she revels in her new state, but then she notices Elizabeth's body. First, the girl tidies it up, stitching up the horrible tear in her back. Then she goes to her bed. In the morning, the girl takes a shower, and suddenly she feels unwell. She pulls out special syringes and injects herself with the stabilizer, drawn from the spine of the unconscious matrix, Elizabeth. Then she goes to the living room, delighted with her new, young, and strong body. Later, the girl goes to a casting call, buying a seductive swimsuit along the way. She takes the name Sue and has a stunning effect on the producer's assistants and eventually on Harvey himself. Sue is chosen to replace Elizabeth as the show's host. Although the girl immediately warns that every 7 days she will leave to care for her sick mother. This completely wins over Harvey, as the audience will surely love it. Sue begins to enjoy the fame that once belonged to the original version. However, the week flies by, and it's time for the switch. Sue attaches special tubes to her arms, allowing the substance to flow through. Soon Elizabeth comes to, while Sue's body slips into a coma. The woman cleans herself up and goes to the TV studio, where Harvey presents her with a gift from the crew. Back home, Elizabeth marks the days when she can be herself on her calendar. She spends all her time at home. At the end of the week, she receives a message about a new batch of substance delivered to her postbox. After 7 days, they switch again. Sue enjoys her new life, starring in commercials and reveling in her growing popularity. But one day, she starts thinking about the Matrix body and sets up a secret room in the bathroom. Just as she finishes, her neighbor knocks on the door, complaining about the noise from the tools. Seeing Sue, the man is immediately smitten and offers his help, but the girl slams the door and hides Elizabeth's body in the secret room, then replaces her portrait on the wall with her own. Sue's show becomes wildly successful, with the ratings soaring, much to the producer's delight. The girl starts making new friends and attending parties. One evening, she brings a young man home, but when things get intimate, she suddenly feels unwell and remembers that it's time for the switch. Sue rushes to the secret room and performs an additional stabilization procedure. She spends the night with the young man and switches with Elizabeth later than necessary. When Elizabeth wakes up, she finds the living room in disarray and her hands twisted with gout. Struggling to put herself together, she calls the substance provider's number, but they inform her that the changes are irreversible and remind her not to forget that they are one whole. Elizabeth tidies up the apartment and then sees a recording of Sue's new show on TV. She is forced to admit that Sue is very beautiful. Later, she hears the neighbor asking Sue for a date, but she doesn't answer the door. Then she receives a new batch of substance. On her way out, she stops at a cafe where an old man starts a conversation lamenting that 7 days is too long to wait to return to one's body. He drops his cards, and among them, Elizabeth sees a card identical to her substance card. She recognizes the young nurse who advised her on the experiment in his eyes. He knows that with each time, it becomes harder to remember that you deserve the right to exist. Soon, the second part will literally start consuming her. Elizabeth runs home, bumping into Sue's boyfriend, who of course doesn't recognize her. But this makes her remember Fred. She dials his number, and her ecstatic classmate arranges a meeting at a cafe. Elizabeth dresses up, puts on makeup, and hides her hands under gloves. But unexpectedly, she sees a billboard with Sue on it. Her own reflection immediately disappoints her, and she changes her makeup, then wipes it off entirely. Crying, she rips off her dress and stays home, ignoring Fred's persistent calls, binge eating to cope with her stress and insecurity. When it's Sue's turn again, she steps onto the set and begins the show. However, during the exercises, she suddenly feels something protruding beneath the skin of her buttocks. The girl immediately halts the filming, and while the puzzled cameraman tries to understand what he just shot, she runs to the bathroom, where she finds a lump on her rear and pulls out a fried chicken leg from her navel. She realizes that while she is living an active life, Elizabeth is binge eating at home. Sue is furious. She complains to the substance operator, but all she hears in return is, "They are one whole." Weeks go by. One day, Sue urgently summons Harvey to announce that she will be the new host of their New Year's show, the pinnacle of her career. Sue is overjoyed. However, she is now abusing the stabilizer more and more, which causes Elizabeth's body to age rapidly. When Elizabeth wakes up again, she finds herself old and decrepit, with stiff joints and almost entirely gray hair. The woman calls the substance operator, and he suggests ending the experiment, but there is no way to restore her condition now. She tries to convince herself to stop the experience, but she can't give up such a beautiful second version of herself, even though her knees barely function. She remembers Harvey's gift. It turns out to be a cookbook, and Elizabeth throws herself into learning new recipes with renewed energy, while Sue continues to dominate the TV screens. One day, Elizabeth hears Sue laughing at her, mocking the aging star, which drives her to eat even more. Elizabeth becomes so enraged that she vows to end the experiment. The day for the switch comes, and once again, Sue finds a room full of leftovers and empty bottles. To gain independence and take advantage of the Matrix helplessness, Sue stockpiles stabilizers for 3 months. However, the day before the live broadcast of the show, the stabilizer runs out. Sue calls the supplier to ask for more, but he says Elizabeth is the only source, and they need to switch to replenish the supply. There is simply no other option. Sue, barely conscious, starts the switch. Her boyfriend hears strange noises coming from the bathroom, but the girl doesn't open the door because inside is now a hideous, bald woman with a deformed hump. Finally, she yells at him, and he runs off. Elizabeth, now a horrific creature, calls the substance operator and begs to end the experiment. Then she heads out for the final batch. Returning home, she drags Sue's body into the living room and prepares to inject her with the serum that will kill her duplicate. With the syringe ready, she looks around, staring at the portraits of Sue for a long time. She realizes she can't kill her young version. Elizabeth brings Sue back to consciousness. Seeing the half-empty syringe and realizing what Elizabeth had intended, Sue flies into a rage, beating her Matrix to death. Afterwards, she goes to the New Year's show. She is dressed in a gorgeous gown, but suddenly Sue feels unwell and runs to the bathroom. It turns out that with the Matrix dead, Sue's body begins to rapidly deteriorate. First, her teeth fall out, making it impossible for her to smile for the sponsors, which Harvey so desperately wants. Then a nail falls off, and her ear drops off. In a panic, Sue rushes home where she injects herself with the last of the activator, hoping to create a new version of herself. But instead, a monstrous hybrid of both versions, Eliza Sue, is born. The monster recalls her audition and tries to beautify herself by putting on a dress and a homemade Elizabeth mask before heading to the show. When she arrives at the TV center, she steps onto the stage and addresses the audience, but her mask falls off. Screams of horror fill the hall, and she is called a monster. The audience flees in panic, and one man decapitates Eliza Sue, after which her mutilated body floods the entire hall with blood. What's left of Eliza Sue runs out of the studio, and out on the street, it disintegrates into guts. Elizabeth's original face manages to crawl to the actress's star on the Walk of Fame, where it looks up, smiles, and melts away. The next morning, the remaining puddle of blood is scrubbed away, erasing the memory of the actress. At times funny, but mostly terrifying, the film dissects society's imposed standards on women's bodies and the pursuit of eternal beauty, forcing viewers to reflect on what it means to be yourself and how important it is to accept who you are.